Hi everyone, and welcome to another speed run. We're basically moving up the rating a little bit. We're now 1200. And in these videos, I try to look at the typical mistakes that our opponent makes around this level, what we should be thinking around this rating level. I'm trying to guide you through the stages of thinking to improve your rating. Now, I'm going to start playing openings which I've done courses on. And one of the most popular openings that I've done a course on is the black line, which we looked at in the last video. So I'm going to stick with that, see how much you remember. You must be able to get in the habit of remembering setups. And the first setup of the black line is stage one, what I've done here. Bring the knights into the center and prepare to get a pawn in the center with this move e5. And my opponent had done something very sensible, but this is what I would consider the first slight mistake. It's maybe not terrible, but it's an unnecessary pawn move. I prefer keeping the tension when you have two pawns nicely positioned in the center. Why push them on? Why commit your pawns? And there was no need to do this before making some sensible developing moves. And my first thought here is, well, now I have a target I can try to chip away at with my pawn and go for. It might not be a terrible move, but the two things I'm thinking, first of all, it does stop me playing my standard plan. So if your opponent does something a little bit odd that you're not expecting, like this, then you obviously have to rethink what you've been hardwired told already. And the standard plan of going e5 is still interesting here, but I don't think I think it's a little bit risky after my opponent takes on pass on. So I'm going to now change plans, adapt, and I'm going to play this move c6. And the idea is I'm going to try to take advantage of my opponent moving the central pawn. And I'm maybe going to try to target this one slightly. I could put a little bit of pressure on that pawn at some point. If my opponent captures, then I gain more pawns in the center, which is considered to be positionally desirable. Another thing I'm thinking here, I want to get castled. Let's not forget about the principles. And getting castled, I need to develop my bishop. And I don't want to play e6 now because that idea of my opponent capturing there, and it might not be terrible for me, but I don't feel I want to play that. So I've got to get this somewhere else. And now by putting it on g7, well, this looks like a much more sensible diagonal, especially now that my opponent has moved that pawn from d4, because my bishop has further range. It's not going to be blocked by that pawn. So I'm in no rush to take on d5. I prefer to keep the tension in the middle of the board. I don't know, I probably will take there at some point, but it gives me more flexibility. And it also, I like giving my opponent chances to do slightly positional, undesirable things. And as I said, if my opponent captures on c6, I capture towards the center. And that gives me, I feel, quite a nice position. Well, this is kind of a sensible idea, and now my opponent has... I have to be a little bit careful of some tricks here. So whenever there's a bishop here pointing at what I call your Achilles heel, you have to be aware. So let's just calculate there's nothing I have to be aware of. Bishop here, let's say he opens it up, and then plays e5. I capture, knight captures. I don't think there's any tricks because I'm one move away from castling now, and my rook is always guarding my queen if there's a bishop takes f7. You have to watch out for some common tactical ideas when everything gets cleared up on this file, and then suddenly there's a bishop f7 check, and you're like, oh no, I have to move my king away from defense of the queen. But here my rook will always be guarding. So I'm going to castle now. I'm sticking to the principles. My opponent, apart from playing this slightly odd move, which is not terrible, is playing very well, sticking to the principles of chess, castling, developing, good play. Getting a rook in the center, another good move there. And here, well, if I capture, you can see my opponent is very well positioned for that. So I'm now thinking about playing a move such as b5, and that is one of the advantages you can see of me keeping the tension here. Now I have to just calculate, if pawn takes c6, I can take the bishop, take here. That looks okay, but maybe I should be preparing that one first. Shall we go for it? Let's go a6 first. And I'm just really now preparing to do this. I've got to move a little bit quicker. And can my opponent play e5? My opponent's played this actually very well. This last move was a very good move, getting the rook behind the pawn, because my opponent's waiting for the opening of the e-file, positioning all of, I don't know if it, I guess it's, yeah, all of his pieces in the right squares. So very nice play. And with this move, well, I'm trying to help myself play b5 at some point. I still have to calculate now. What happens if he takes here? Okay, another sensible move, developing a piece to the best square. I'm going to give this one a little kick. Whenever opponent moves a piece into your own half the board, it's useful to kick it. And now I'm going to put this queen here. And this is trying to just gain a little bit more control of e5. I'm watching out for my opponent's pawn breaks. If my opponent breaks with e5, which my opponent has done, which I'm very surprised about, because my last move was aimed at stopping precisely that idea. And it's a simple matter there of my opponent maybe not counting how many pieces he had controlling e5 and how many I had controlling e5, because it's clear now that I have more controlling that square than my opponent does. And that was a little bit of impatience. My opponent had played very, very well up to that point of the game, but I feel this was a rather impatient move. And this is now, obviously I have to stop this idea, but this is a very useful move, unleashing my bishop to defend that pawn, also trying to gain the bishop pair now by threatening to swap that bishop. And there's one little mistake, impatience, has thrown it away. It's a simple case that my opponent did there of not counting how many pieces does he have defending a square, how many do I have attacking. If your opponent has more attacking that square than you have defending it, you can't control it. So you've got to make sure you can count at least up to 5. It sounds simple, but actually, you know, calculation is much harder than that, but that's a basic way to get started with calculation. Okay, now it's time to get rid of this bishop before it can take that pawn. And here I can now play b5, because capture on c6 does not attack anything. I might as well, because it gives my bishop this diagonal, and I'm gonna now move my bishop to this diagonal. Another idea was c5 there, but I'm just going to play it very simply, and it feels like I'm very safe. Now let's centralize the rook, I think, putting a little bit more pressure on this pawn. I'm keeping the tension here again. I could go c5, but I don't want to block it. The thing is, my opponent has, and now again my opponent has, this seems to be a key error that my opponent's doing, not counting 1, 2, 3 attacking that square, only 1, 2 defending. And after I capture here, my opponent can't win that pawn back. This is, my opponent has played very good moves, but a little bit lacking basic calculation here, just counting how many opponent has attacking, defending. And like I said, that's a great way just to start your calculations in chess. Count how many are defending it. And I was saying I didn't want to play c5 there because I have the 2 bishops. My opponent has the knight, and I want to avoid blocking the position up when my opponent has the knight. I want to keep it as free and as open as possible. And here my opponent rather crumbling after playing very well at the start of the game by dropping a piece there. And I shouldn't relax, let's remember that. I should keep my wits about me. I'm going to go for exchanges now that I'm serious material up, so I'm happy to exchange the rooks off on this file, and I welcome the exchanges here. This can only help me. And my next plan, well, I'm going to take that knight off. I'm not even going to think about that one, and I'm going to just play this move. I'm thinking about f5, but I don't really want to weaken my king too much there. Wow, welcome to the Players League. Okay, thank you for that. Am I a legend yet? Not quite yet. I've got a way to be before I get a legend. But let's just have a look at that. So my opponent played this interesting idea in the opening. Not such a bad idea, actually. And I wonder if I should be playing e5 here. But I played normal moves. I'm trying to take advantage of my opponent's peculiar option. And I'm developing very sensibly. I want to get castled. I'm happy now I'm castled. My opponent, great move, getting the rook ready for the opening of the file. There's only one piece my opponent needs to develop. Great move, developing that piece. I'm now trying to keep control of this square and getting ready to advance here. And my opponent just plays this one mistake, not counting 1, 2, 3. How many pieces I have defending that square, and how many pieces, 1, 2, my opponent has. And a much better move here would be, I'm playing this. This is a non-threatening move. If your opponent's playing non-threatening moves, then you should realize you have more time in the position than you would do normally. If your opponent's playing very aggressive moves, obviously you have to act more urgently. But with a move like this, I think it's clear that time is on my opponent's side. If I was white here, I'd be thinking, right, how can I improve my position? Well, b5 might be an idea. I'm threatening that bishop in some lines after pawn takes pawn. So I think bishop b3 would have been a very high-class move here. Get out of the way of some b5 lunge, get out of the way of the queen, and just slowly try to centralize the other rook and use this space advantage in the center. That's the way I would have played the position there. Okay, so we got the white pieces now, and I'm going to go to d4. And another opening I know that I'm quite famous for is the London system, which I did feature in my last video. So we're going to stick to that today and the black line. And again, when you're trying to first learn an opening, try to do it in stages. And stage 1 is this setup. Now, one of the things about London is this knight here is a little bit peculiar. You know, it's good and bad. It's often bad when a pawn comes here, but it's often good for quick development and coming here. But the next stage of the London is to play e3 and generally develop these pieces. And again, we're looking at what our opponent plays. Our opponent brought the bishop out there. We might have gone for f3 and g4. But our opponent hasn't done that. Instead, our opponent has gone e6. And actually now I'm following, again, I know basic theory in this because I did a lot of research on this opening. And an idea here, which is very interesting, now that my opponent has lost control of g4, is this move. And this is actually a move that Magnus Carlsen played in this position against Fabiano Caruana. My opponent hasn't even blinked about that move, and I'm going to push on because this is the whole point. I want to disrupt the development of that knight. My opponent's still not thinking. Very unwise for my opponent not to do that. It's okay, but the position is very tactical. You need to slow down. My first thought, if I take here, bishop h6, take here, bishop here, I'm actually going to do this one because I have a space advantage over on this area of the board. My opponent immediately comes in to the position, and I'm now going to try and force that knight away. I didn't want to take that knight because there's a little bit of pressure against here, but I'm trying to pressurize that knight, and my opponent, I feel, is moving far too quickly here. I mean, this is maybe not a terrible move. I can actually now, well, I say it might be a terrible move because this square e5 is horribly weak, and I can get rid of this knight with f3. We could play a positional game now where I just try to go f3, force that knight to move, and take advantage of this backwards pawn my opponent has. I could also think about taking here, but I'm going to play it slow. And the reason I'm playing this is this knight is the one piece which seems to be holding my opponent's position up. My opponent not thinking, and I'm just going to kick that knight away. We're going to get an exchange of knights, I would imagine, here. And the reason I played this is this f5 move, very committal. And I'm now playing for these weaknesses my opponent has created on the e file. And it's getting a little bit more advanced, as you can see, the thinking now that we're adopting. But e5 is a long-term weaknesses. My opponent can't back that square up with a pawn, and e6 is a backwards pawn. It could always be a weakness there. And I don't feel any danger of castling here, and I've got ideas of ganging up on that weakness. Also, I'd like to get my knight to this square, but then I'd need to get it to d3. So I'm thinking, how do we do that? I'm thinking, well, my knight going to e2 to c1 to d3 is one idea, or f2 to h3 f2 here, because this is the square I'd like to get it to. Ideally, I'd want to exchange my bishop for that knight, have complete dominance over there. And it seems to me that the best way to go might be, well, h5 is also very tempting to give myself the option of this one. Which way do I go here? Am I worried about h6 in this position? Maybe. And then at least I have bishop g2. I don't want to change the pawn structure. It's actually good, I feel, me having double pawns here, because if a pawn was on e3, I wouldn't have this long-term possibility. Okay, so I was looking at my opponent's ideas. Now, I don't really want to change the pawn structure, so I'm going to go bishop g2. And the point of this is that my opponent can't change the pawn structure. And after this exchange, he's playing very quickly. And now I'm going to just defend that bishop. I want to get my queen back around to this way just to cover this open file. I want to now try to get my rook here. So let's start getting my queen, just because this black queen coming in might be a little bit annoying. And okay, we could go for a little tactical shot there, but I don't think we need to. My opponent should be able to defend this idea very quickly. I'd rather play more positionally, and the only thing that's kind of concerning me is this H file. I'm just going to defend the d4 pawn. The thing is, I'm happy to exchange, because in the long run, I feel my opponent has more weaknesses with this square. But my opponent has been playing very quickly, very confidently. So I'm going to speed up a little bit now. What's my idea to win this one? I want to get my knight to d3. Am I worried about this? I'm more worried about the bishop coming and taking my knight. So I want to give my knight. Then my opponent comes in here. My opponent's playing very well, actually. Has to be said here. This bishop coming here is quite annoying. Then the queen coming here. So how are we going to stop this one? Okay, right. Oh god, I'm moving slow as well, aren't I? So I want to go here, but then bishop b5 would be a really class move. I don't want to exchange my knight, and he's played it, and I'm worried about the queen now coming in here. So I've actually got a real fight on my hands. I saw this idea, and I've blindly allowed my opponent to play it. So I've actually got a bad position here. I'm losing this pawn. Why did I even allow this? I don't know. I'm going to now, rather than going to explaining mood, go into fighting mood, because I'm clearly worse here. And what I'm now trying to do, I'm going to have to give this pawn up, but I'm coming with a4 and knight d3. I've got 39 seconds left to try and get rid of that queen. And yes, I have dropped a pawn. It might not be the end of the world, though. It wasn't a great pawn. And remember, the plan all along has been able to get this knight into that fantastic square. So I'm going to go for this now. This might actually still be even better for me, but I've let this slip a little bit. Okay, we're going to come here, forcing that queen to go away. And h4 is the only square I can see it. And then I'm going to play f4, and the extra pawn of my opponent's is pretty irrelevant. And here I'm going to go something like, but the problem is now I don't control this square, so my opponent can also try to get a knight to d6 to come in there. Instead, he's playing for ideas of getting the bishop back to get rid of my good knight. I can't allow that, so we're forcing that one away. Okay, we're going to have to let that bishop into the position again now. And my next plan here, I've got this beautiful knight. Now, knight c6 would be a very classy move if my opponent finds that, swapping off my good knight. My opponent does find that class move. And how am I going to win this one? Well, on the time, it's not going to be easy. I figure the ending has at least no danger for me, because my opponent's only passed pawn is the e pawn, but that's not going. But we've got a real fight on our hands here. And I maybe could have gone queen h6. If I had a little bit more time, I would have calculated that, but I'm actually on very much danger of losing on time here. So let's make sure we don't do that. My opponent might come with a queen into the queen side now, and we don't want to allow any breaks. I've got to get my queen into the position if I can. So let's bring that one into the position. I could have gone h8 immediately. I'm playing very badly in this game, I have to say. Not happy with the way I'm playing here at all. Why didn't I come to h8? I would have been one tempo quicker. Now a move like a5 could be a very good move here. Okay, let's get the queen now in. My opponent's going to play A5. Let's at least try to harass that king now as much as we can. But my time is horrendous here. I'm going to try and win this pawn. I think I'm better now. But we've got a blitz battle. Can I get my king around now? All my opponent's pawns are on dart squares. That gives me some hope to win this. But c5, is that going to be an annoying move? Oh no, my time is just cracking here. Really cracking. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to win this one. Oh dear. Gonna try. With 5 seconds, not going to be enough, is it? Oh no, I blundered! But my opponent did not see it. Oh, 2 seconds. Jesus. Oh no! I lost the game! Can you believe it? Well played to my opponent. I should have taken the draw there with the time. Me trying to explain stuff. So let's have a look at that. I mean, my opponent played well, and I just let my opponent gain more control there. Just shows you how things can happen. A little bit embarrassing. It is going to happen at some point though. And let's get a review of that game. Obviously, whenever you lose a game, you of course should review your game, see where you went wrong, and you can lose to anyone if you get a little bit complacent, as I did there. Now my opponent had worse accuracy than me, but that doesn't matter the way I played it. So let's have a look. So I'm just going to bring up, and again, this is something I'd say you do yourself whenever you lose a position. Let's have a look now. But I spent too much time at the end there, obviously completely winning, but I was trying to take off the last the last pawn, which I didn't do in time. Should have probably gone for the draw. Okay, so we go to the position now. Here you can already see my opening is right, and maybe I could have taken that one, but I think the way I played it is all okay, and we're going to go forwards. And this position is certainly a little bit better for me. This is all okay. Now h6 is the one move I've got to be a little bit careful of. I think this is all okay. I'm just going to see where I went wrong, because it's certainly started to go a little bit dodgy here. And this is good. Now, what I should probably be playing here, I shouldn't be allowing this whole idea. So I don't know why this arrow's been shown, but my opponent's idea of going knight here and bishop here is the only way my opponent can get activity. This coming down here is very easy to stop with queen f2, so I don't have to worry about this. And this is actually a case of me not being fully aware of what my opponent's trying to do, because remember, this is kind of the cause of my problems when my opponent got these moves in. So I've got to learn from my mistakes, and I've got to realize and be more aware of my opponent's possibilities and stopping them. Prophylactic play. So the move I played, rook here, is probably okay, but I think if I can just think of a way to do this, maybe a move like a4, and if the knight comes here, we can go b3, and we stop this one coming in. I know there's tactical ideas the computer's showing, but I'm more interested in the positional aspects. And later on, I can try to take over this file and play this slow build-up. But anyway, well played to my opponent. Congratulations. That's the first loss in the speed run I've had. And, well, I better make up for that now and see if we can get a win. And that was a very, very tough game. Let's see if we can get 2 more games in at this speed run. It's going to take me quite a long time to build up my rating if I continue like that. Okay, so we're playing a 1400 now. And my opponent has played this opening, the Englund Gambit. One of those gambits which I've talked about before. It's basically not a good way to play. Let me just remember how we refute it. Here, bishop d2, takes here, and then knight c3, isn't it? I mean, the Englund Gambit, if you're serious about getting better at chess, then this Gambit, like a lot of Gambits, it's just not the right way to play. The one trick is here, bishop b4. but this one refutes the Gambit. I mean, if you're playing tricky openings, which are basically just losing, you know, they're not. Then they don't. I don't actually know this move, but let's see if we can work it out. I know this line is bad for my opponent. Okay, this is a threat, so I guess I just control that threat, and then we have Rook B1 next. Let's just do this, and it's just not a great way to have long-term improvement. You've got to play openings that are just not losing for you. I know I generally say any opening you play is okay, but not just one-trick ponies. It's like, okay, you land your punch, you win. If you don't land your punch, you're just going to get a bad position, and you're going to keep trying to land that one punch. Well, it's not a very good way to improve. And I think here, by playing normal moves, I should be doing very well. So let's just think the best way to refute this. So we have knight here, then queen here. We also have knight here, queen here, and then like a3. Got to make sure. Does that win a piece? That looks like it wins a piece to me. So here, attacking the queen, attacking here. If my opponent takes here, I can take the knight. So here, queen. You've got to obviously calculate to refute these. This is where you need to slow down. And then just a3 if queen a5. If bishop takes here, knight takes. I don't see any idea at all for my opponent after this move. This just looks like my opponent should be losing now. I've avoided some cheap tricks here, and my opponent's going to be losing a piece in the position. Can you Adam and Eve it? I lost the game. Me talking too much, getting a bit too short of time, but well played to my opponent there. He played much better than his rating. I'm just going to play this move, and I don't see how my opponent's going to get out of this. So again, there's certain gambits which you need to know, and I know the Englund Gambit, whatever it's called, is very popular, but it's only popular at lower level, Patzer level. Shall I dare I say Patzer level? You're probably going to kill me for saying that, Patzer level, but you wouldn't see it being played at any Grandmaster level. And here, well, I've got a couple of ways to win. Knight f3 or rook takes b4. Let's attack his queen. His queen is knights on pre. I say win. I'm just going to be a piece up here for nothing. And again, it's just not a good way to develop your chess. You know, you can maybe play this once or twice as a surprise, but the one thing to remember, it's like any gambit that is dubious or any very dubious opening. As soon as your results start to go bad, you must change. So okay, you can play the gambit maybe up to, you could maybe play this gambit if you're really insistent on it, up to, I don't know, like 1200 standard. But as soon as you get to a certain standard, please, for your own benefit, try, change. Please change to something which you're not going to lose every game in and get a lost position, because you're giving yourself a really bad position right from the start. So okay, so how are we going to win this? We're a piece up. Winning one positions is still not easy. He's got one pawn for the piece. I'm first of all just going to get my king safe. I'm going to try to get my pieces developed. I'm going to try to push his pieces back, this knight with my pawns. I'm going to try to use my extra piece, because let's push that knight back first of all. I'm going to use my extra piece as best I can, put it on this diagonal, and okay, he has knight here. Am I worried about that? Not really. I'm gonna play, okay, knight here, rook d3 seems good enough here. If he attacks my rook, I'm also threatening. I'm still looking for weaknesses in his position. This is still a weakness in his position that I'm gonna come straight down in. He's maybe trying to get some tricks in, but they're not going to work against me. And against any decent player, well, the way he's played this is far worse than my last opponent. I'm even going to play queen b1 because I'm piece up. Exchanging queens off would only benefit me. And you can get to a certain stage playing like this, but you're never going to get higher than like 1400. You don't really deserve to be, if you're looking for tricks. You can't play chess looking for tricks. You can play, I'm called a very tricky player, but the way I generally play, I do gambit. I do occasionally even do dubious gambits, but in general, my philosophy is that they try to at least have quite a lot of logic behind them. When I'm trying to develop my pieces, I'm trying to find weaknesses in my opponent's position when I attack. I'm doing my moves for certain reasons when I go for my very tricky play, and I'm actually quite a positional player. Everything I'm doing generally has a good positional background. Now, okay, let's go back to the chess. The reason I've done this, I'm trying to stop his majority of pawns, which is his queenside pawns. He's got 3 versus my 2. I'm trying to make his majority of pawns there very weak. So, well, not weak, irrelevant. So that pawn is now irrelevant. I'm going for exchanges now because I'm a whole piece up. So we just get rid of that one. I'm also trying to use my majority of pawns. I've got 4 pawns over here. So let's use those pawns. I'm trying to get my pieces to the best squares I can. Rook to the 7th rank. Get that straight into the position. Obviously, we've got to keep aware of tactics. I'm using the pin on the G pawn there. He can't do anything. I'm constantly, unlike that other game I lost, I'm really making sure in this game my mistake there was not being aware of my opponent's activity. I allowed my opponent's minor pieces to become active, and here we're not doing that. I'm just trying to stop all of that play, and like I say, we're creating a real threat now. And again, don't relax. And it was a blitz game, that one I lost. I got a bit too short of time, didn't I? But okay, my opponent has resigned there. And again, don't play these Englund Gambits. I know it's so attractive when you see a video by like Eric Rosen or someone, and again, I think even they say it's tricky openings to go and play it. And go and enjoy it for a week or so, but please don't play these things for the rest of your life. As soon as you lose a game like that, just stop it, play a proper opening. You'll never progress. Other openings might not be as fun, but they will be when you start winning on a regular basis with them. Okay, now we'll make this the last game of the day. I'm going to go back to the Jabava London. So stage 1, can you remember it, is bring the knight out. And actually against this one, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go e4, because my opponent hasn't stopped me playing this move. And if d5, we're now into a French defense. Now, this is supposed to be a bad move. I'm just trying to remember why. Again, my memory is not always good. I think it's because I can just go here and there's some quick idea of attacking g7. So can I do that now? Here, knight takes here, queen takes g7. And then if there's a knight check somewhere, c3. And if knight takes, I take the rook. I think this is just a winning idea. Let's just double check it because it is a bit tactical. Queen here, and if the knight takes here, I take this one here, attacking the rook. If my opponent moves the knight anywhere with check, I play c3. And if the knight takes back, I take the rook. And that looks... I know this is winning. And again, certain openings, just being aware of the first 10 moves, by creating a course in this opening, the Jabava London, I am aware of the first, nearly all the tricks in this. And obviously, if you buy my course, or even if you don't want to buy anything, have a look at my free YouTube videos. You'll get a very, very good understanding of what to do there. And I seem to recall now that this tricky little a3 move is the right way to play, because I can't take the knight because the bishop takes c3. Well, even that's quite interesting, but this move is, I think, the right way to do it, and I hope I haven't messed this up. Now I've got bishop here or bishop here as an idea. I've got b4, but okay, let's make sure we don't... No, bishop here, have to play this one, and then pawn takes f6. And how is this? Actually, again, it's a bit more tactical than I remembered here. Actually, okay, so bishop here, f6. Bishop takes f6. Rook takes, pawn takes, threatening 2 checkmates. So I know this is good for me, but I've got to make sure I get it right. Now, the thing is, if I go bishop here, then queen e7 might be playable. And if I take there, takes, still got the issue with this knight. So I think... Oh, no, but if I go bishop here now, there's knight to e4 check. So and I don't want to lose that knight. So do I go b4 in this position first, kick that bishop away? So we've got to be very careful here. I nearly blundered with this move. Oh my god. And then even queen takes, knight e4 check would be right. So I know this is winning, and I think it must be a move such as b4 here. Surely this must be the way to play it. And I can, okay, and now I can safely play this move. Okay, it was just getting things right here. And here, pawn takes is very interesting, but I thought bishop takes was stronger. And the point is, rook takes, pawn takes, and I can't. And again, this is just a very tactical game, this one. This is where you kind of need to have a bit of prior knowledge. But I know that this opening sequence is there's mate in one here, and that is checkmate. I know this opening sequence is winning for me. I know that bishop b4 is a losing mistake, but I couldn't remember the way. So I know it has something to do with e5 and queen g4. And this is what often happens with top players. They know a line is a bit dubious. They won't be able to remember the analysis always, but you have to still work it out for yourself. But you've got some of that subconscious analysis in there. Let's just make sure I did that right. I mean, I'm not even convinced I played particularly the right way. I'm just going to, again, we'll just double check this one and just see, because you know it's one of those ones where you sometimes have to jog your memory. But my opponent's lack of knowing that he's just going into a bad opening there was get unlimited game review. I don't really care about that at the moment. It's not going to tell me because I need to upgrade, you bastards. Okay, so here this is, so you can see my advantage is plus 1.32. And now queen g4 is correct. Let's see if I played this perfectly. Queen takes g7 is correct. Rook here. And now a3 is correct. So I did jog my subconscious memory correctly. Now this move had me a little, and I did play the right move. So I very nearly played bishop g5 here, which would have been horrendous, because then there's some idea with knight e4 check and I lose. So I did play the right move, b4. And after the bishop came here, I did play maybe a perfect game here just by remembering things correctly. And in this position, well, there's no way really to stop checkmate unless giving up the queen. The other idea is pawn here, queening, winning. Maybe I should have actually played that idea, because in the game, well, let's just go back there, shall we? That would have been a nicer checkmate. I went for the checkmate in one, but actually this way would have been maybe a very nice checkmate. Okay, well, anyway, a little bit up and down speedruns today. Losing that game, that was a little bit annoying. But my opponent played well. He had good accuracy, and I spent a little bit too long. And I've got to remember, what can I learn from today? Always ask yourself that. What can I learn from my session? So important. I can learn that I allowed my opponent's minor pieces to get active. Why did I do that? I should not have been thinking about other ideas except for stopping that activity. If you can remember, in that game, I lost. And obviously, I should have probably taken the draw, but I'm not very good at doing that. Cheers. Please like, please subscribe. Back with more soon. Bye for now.